when we started, we were the first Bitcoin Treasury company, and there were not that many companies out there. 3 months ago, I remember the stat was around 70 public companies in the world had adopted Bitcoin. And now that number stands at around like over 150 companies, public companies holding Bitcoin Treasury. That's like a huge, huge step forward.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Here with me this week is Shirish Jajodia. He is the corporate treasurer at Strategy, and this is his first podcast interview. Shirish, thanks for joining me.
That's great. Thank you, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you. You have a fascinating story, so let's start right there and have people get to know you. You're originally from India, right?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about your origins and how you got to be at Strategy.
Yeah, I'm originally from India, and I came to the US around 12 years ago, and I worked in investment banking for a long time. And I was working in investment banking in India, in London, and moved to New York, and I was doing banking, and I came across Bitcoin, thankfully, in 2017. So I'm the class of 2017.
Me too.
Oh, great. That's awesome. And I'm thankful to one of my colleagues in banking who actually ran by me, and I trusted that guy. And he was like, Shirish, you've got to check this out. And he said, I'm going to send you some resources. And I had not done any research until then. And so I was thankful to spend my first 10 hours looking into it over the weekend. And then that 10 became 20. And that just made me fall through the rabbit hole in the second half of 2017. And I kept getting deeper and deeper. And even, like everybody goes through the same story of learning about Bitcoin and then other things and then learning more. And I learned more and more, stayed with Bitcoin. And then in New York, I was in New York until pandemic, early 2020, and never thought of actually moving outside of New York back then. And coincidentally, in pandemic, New York just turned to be a ghost town, and me and my wife decided, okay, this is a time if you want to do something else. And I came across an opportunity to move to Arlington in Virginia. And by that time, that was 2020, I'd never heard the name of MicroStrategy or Strategy until then. And I saw this company called MicroStrategy investing $250 million into Bitcoin.
Oh.
And I looked them up, looked up Saylor, and I was like, this is some crazy company. But this is the company. It looks like they are making a very, very bold move. So I started following the company, and I was coincidentally, serendipitously located in the same region here. And so it just worked out that way. And I was following the company for a year, and I've watched every Michael Saylor interview that was out there back then. And there were not that many resources. There were like the OGs talking. So from 2017 to 2020 was the time when there were not that many public materials out there. So we were trying to search for whatever is out there. And that was the time when a lot of content started to get developed. And so started following all of that. And it was just around then when Strategy started to also pick up on their capital markets activity. And it was initially investment from their treasury and cash holdings, and then they went down the capital markets route. And the company did not have any investor relations function until then. There was no IR function in the company. There was no talking to the investors. And for 10 years or so, the company never did any earnings call.
Really?
Yeah. So because there are stories that if they did an earnings call, there were only 40 people were showing up, and 30 of them were the employees.
Now they're streamed by hundreds of thousands of people.
Now it's a whole different level. So that's when I came on board to take over the IR function and to also build the capital markets. So I look at all the things Bitcoin Strategy now with respect to the capital markets, raising capital, raising new money, laying out all these new products, Bitcoin products, and investing into Bitcoin, and also looking at all the investors across the spectrum.
Coin Stories is proudly brought to you by Gemini. Investing in Bitcoin has never been easier with Gemini's Bitcoin credit card. Earn up to 4% back in Bitcoin on everyday purchases like gas, dining, groceries, and more, with no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, and no exchange fees on your rewards. And this summer, get 10% back in Bitcoin at golf courses. Plus, sign up today and get a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in your first 90 days. Apply now at Gemini.com/Natalie. If you're like me and want to stay on top of Bitcoin without getting lost in all the noise, you've got to check out the weekly CIO memo from Bitwise Asset Management. Bitwise has been around since 2017 and manages more than $10 billion across 30 plus strategies. CIO Matt Hogan puts together a quick 5-minute memo that breaks down the biggest stories in digital assets each week. Just go to bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo and check it out. And always, of course, carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto. Coin Stories is also brought to you by Bitdeer, a global leader in disruptive technology for Bitcoin mining and high-performance computing for AI. Bitdeer trades under the stock ticker BTDR and boasts more than 2.5 gigawatts of electrical capacity across 4 continents, positioning Bitdeer as one of the most diversified and power-dense computing companies in the world. Learn more at bitdeer.com.
Okay, well, let's start with the IR then, because I keep hearing people say we're seeing the digital transformation of investor relations, and there's been just some really strong community engagement. I think that that's led to even more retail adoption of Bitcoin. Can you talk about how important it is and why companies are prioritizing investor relations more?
Yeah, I think investor relations is such an important function for the companies to be able to talk to their investors and to relay information and tell the story about the company to the end user. And the customer of your stock is basically all your investors.
Yeah.
And a lot of these companies are in the traditional method of doing like quarterly talking to the investors, which has worked for the companies because there's not much happening in between the quarters to be able to relay more frequently. But with respect to us, we are doing things so frequently. Like we are doing things like almost every 2 weeks, every week.
Yeah.
So there's so much to update the investors about that we have to kind of keep up with that and to innovate here. We launched our website strategy.com with so many different metrics to give more real-time information to the investors so that they can see what we see. And then also, how can we communicate? There was an innovation at every step. There was always a struggle with the bankers and lawyers on how you do things differently. And now they understand, like, we always want to do things like differently, and people have gotten around it. But things like publishing a presentation on X, publishing a video on YouTube in real time, and how do you do that? Getting some investor feedback surveys and giving access to new investors to be able to reach out to the company and meet new social mediums, or like how do you reach out to people through different ways and how do you communicate to them, not just the traditional way. So that was all the innovation that we embraced, and that is being very well received by the community.
Well, people are really following those metrics very closely. These KPIs, they want to know the BTC yield, they're following the MNAV. Can you talk about maybe how new some of these metrics even are and how these companies should be evaluated, including strategy?
Yeah, these are all the new metrics we thought about as we were thinking about how do we communicate our story to the world. And when we started, we were the first Bitcoin Treasury company, and there were not that many companies out there. I remember like 5 years ago, Strategy was the only one. 3 months ago, I remember the stat was around 70 public companies in the world had adopted Bitcoin. And now that number stands at around like over 150 companies, public companies holding Bitcoin Treasury. That's like a huge, huge step forward. And when we were doing it, we had to think like, how do we tell the story differently? And what are the investors looking for? Bitcoin count was the only thing we started with. And then like we started to accumulate Bitcoin. But what are investors looking for? They are looking for increasing on the Bitcoin count or Bitcoin content per share. And that's started the Bitcoin yield variation of that. And then we started communicating Bitcoin yield. And then it came about like all the entire theory of now Bitcoin corporate finance. And we had like the convertible debt, we have the equity, we have the preferred equities. So when we have so many instruments, how do we enable people to compare different instruments on what should they invest in, or how do they evaluate the risk return profile of different instruments? And that's how we came up with this theory of different metrics. And we saw a great adoption from all the different companies, and they're adopting those terminologies, and that's a great endorsement to the entire like Bitcoin Treasury ecosystem, where different companies across the world in different countries are adopting similar-ish metrics, and that goes a long way about investors' acceptance also of these metrics to be able to judge the performance of different companies.
Do investors care about core businesses anymore, or do they only care about the Bitcoin?
I think investors do care about the holistic value of the company. So they do look at the Bitcoin business as the primary business. The way I would frame that is they look at it in the proportion of the valuation mix for the different companies. So as the Bitcoin proportion of a company's business keeps on going up, investors' focus shifts more towards the Bitcoin side of things. And that's pretty natural. But they do look at like how the rest of the operating business is also doing. And they just want to make sure it's working fine and there are optimizations happening there. Or what are the growth metrics or something? So they do look at that because that gives them the comfort and sort of the downside protection in a way when evaluating these companies with respect to Bitcoin. But the Bitcoin content has certainly like gone up a lot. So the focus is a lot on the Bitcoin side now.
Well, now you've accumulated so much Bitcoin. What is it like to manage a Bitcoin treasury, especially one that is literally making moves, it seems, on a weekly basis? You're kind of buying Bitcoin all the time, right?
Yeah, the way to think about it, like we are buying the Bitcoin around the clock. People ask this question to me and us and our Bitcoin team that, oh, did Strategy buy Bitcoin? Or there's speculation I see on X when like, oh, they must have bought the Bitcoin, that's why it's spiking. But what I say is we are actually buying Bitcoin around the clock. Almost every day, every hour, every second, we are in the market. And the way we buy Bitcoin is we do not move the price of the Bitcoin. So we kind of manage our buys in a way that we are kind of some proportion of the market liquidity. So we do not kind of eat up into the price of the Bitcoin. So if it's appreciating very fast, that very likely may not be us because we don't like to kind of move the price of the Bitcoin much. And then say if it is going down, then we can take the opportunity to move faster probably and acquire faster. So we change the pacings of how we acquire, but we are in the market most of the time, depending on how much we are buying with.
How are you not moving the market when you're sometimes making these massive purchases?
That's the thing. I mean, it moves over time. And the way I would also say is it kind of provides a higher and higher floor over time. As there's more institutional buying happening. These institutions are holding for a long term and we are holding for the long term. So the floor price of Bitcoin keeps going up over time. However, like in the near term, there are other market factors that determine the price fluctuations. And that's like the trader community that kind of impacts the near-term price movement and not like the long-term kind of buyers. Because the trading volume, if you see, Bitcoin's trading volume is over $50 billion in any 24 hours. And that's like a huge volume. So if you are buying $1 billion over a couple of days, it's not that much actually to move the market.
Interesting. So if people are watching this and they're considering adopting Bitcoin, are you basically saying that this is a very easy strategy in terms of actually purchasing Bitcoin, holding it, the custody aspects? I mean, is this something that anyone can figure out?
I think the most difficult aspect of this is to get the right understanding and the right conviction. That's perhaps the most difficult thing. And the first buys for people are difficult. And that first movement, first step forward, and probably the second step forward is equally difficult as well if the price has dropped from where you bought first. But once you have gotten through those first two steps and you have gotten into the process, then I think it starts to become more natural and easier once you understand with conviction. Thankfully, our playbook is out there now for other people to look at. And this ecosystem has developed significantly from when we started 5 years ago, when there was not that much market resources available. So it has gotten certainly easier for others to follow our paths. And just to give you some context, when we started, it was hard to find one single bank to underwrite any financing for us. One single bank. And none of the big bulge bracket banks wanted to touch Bitcoin. And now we have relationships with over 25 banks and with who's who, like all the banks in the world and everybody wants to do business with us. We are one of the highest fee payers last year, or the last 12 months, 18 months.
Wow.
And we have raised so much capital, and we see all the banks warming up to digital assets.
Yeah.
They are getting, more friendlier. It's still evolving, and there's more room to go, but it's improving. On the research analyst side, there were like 2 analysts covering MicroStrategy or strategy. And now there are over 12 analysts covering strategy, and there's a lot of interest. So that has evolved. And in terms of institutional research and publication, I mean, all these ETFs and Fidelity and other people are publishing so much content, and there's good content, and podcasters like you guys, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job of getting the message across from different participants in the ecosystem. And there's so much great content for everyone out there. So people can figure out what they want and understand. And for the executives who are looking to enter into this strategy, they have the resources available now. So it's kind of more readily available. And I wouldn't say easy, but it's readily available for people. And they need to do the initial proof of work, put in the hours. And then once they get through that, then they just need to get in with it with the conviction. And execution of the strategy is also important, doing it the right way. What I would say is now we are seeing this emergence of the Bitcoin Treasury companies, and we'll see the whole spectrum of companies coming up. We were the first, we are the largest, and we will remain like the triple A grade, the most institutional grade company in the ecosystem. And we take risk management very seriously. But there'll be companies across the spectrum. So you'll see all different companies coming up, and they will follow different risk-reward spectrum. And so they need to do their calibration of where they want to sit in the spectrum. And the investors need to understand where they need to be investing accordingly to find the right spot.
This episode is brought to you by Casa, the leader in Bitcoin self-custody solutions, helping people like me secure their wealth with simple, powerful, multi-key vaults. And now Casa is here to help businesses and even governments do the same. Introducing Casa Business, a secure, easy-to-use 3-key vault designed for small and large businesses with team signing capabilities and a web dashboard. Start your Bitcoin treasury the secure way and protect your assets. Get 10% off your Casa plan at casa.io/Natalie. Next up, Bitkey, a Bitcoin hardware wallet with multi-sig security, inheritance, and a recovery system designed for real life. No complex setup, no seed phrase, just true self-custody without the stress. Named one of Time's best inventions in 2024. Use code STORIES for 20% off at bitkey.world. Up next, the Bitcoin way. There's only one way to protect your Bitcoin from government, politicians, and third-party risk, and that is 100% self-custody. My friends at the Bitcoin way will train you how to do this the right way the first time. No compromises. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Natalie to speak with the experts about making sure your Bitcoin is secure and private. If you use Bitcoin, you need a wallet that's actually fast, simple, and packed with features. That's why I love Speed Wallet. Send, receive, or swap Bitcoin and stablecoins instantly. You can also shop gift cards for your favorite brands with Bitcoin. And check out mini apps where you can play games, watch content, and explore new ways to earn Bitcoin. Download Speed Wallet now via the QR code or the link in my show notes and use my referral code CoinStories10 for 5,000 free sats.
Can you share some lessons from releasing some of these preferreds and even using AI to come up with some of them?
It's quite a process. It's a very, very involved process of coming up with these things. The idea is we want to constantly be innovating, differentiating ourselves, and also offering products that are needed in the market and what people want. And we saw a need here for long duration, perpetual products, which can give high yield to people linked to Bitcoin. And the bond market is just so huge. And we were doing the equity issuances, we were doing the convertible issuances before, but we have been thinking about the perpetual bond market for a long time. And the bond market is so huge. And it took us many iterations to get started, first of all, and then to think about where we want to go in the next step. And AI helps kind of accelerate the research process, because when we think about these new things, 99.9% of the times, those have never been done before. So we have to come up with all new different things that we'll run into from banking perspective, from legal, from accounting, from taxation, from all different angles. Like, it's an unknown, uncharted territory. And we are very particular about doing it the right way. So we give in a lot of thought, and our team gives a lot of thought in depth about thinking about different scenarios, and very like in-depth modeling, in-depth scenario analysis, and looking in all different directions and thinking and obsessing about every single element of the product. So to the end user, it may seem like here's the product, but we have thought through every single element about it in very depth. So a lot goes into it, and AI kind of helps answer some of the questions, and it kind of helps answer 80-90% there. And you can get a lot of comparative analysis and research, and it helps with the research. And when you go to the bankers and lawyers in isolation and giving them just an idea, it becomes difficult for them. But then when you take some backup and give them some ideas, and here is what we know, it kind of helps accelerate the process. So that's where it comes in.
People have come to expect news from you guys basically every Monday. I mean, Michael Saylor posts the orange dot chart on Sunday, and it's people are waiting for the next buy. They're waiting for the next announcement. Does that put a lot of pressure on the company? I mean, because you can't do something necessarily every single week, right?
Yeah, the way I'll say that is we just play our natural, game, and we just do our natural business, and it's business as usual at Strategy. So we are in the business of raising more capital and buying more Bitcoin. So we'll continue to do that as long as there's the right opportunity and it's accretive, it's beneficial for investors. We look at all investors across the board, and as long as it's beneficial for them, we'll continue doing it.
What do you think about the criticisms when you have these pundits and these mainstream voices who criticize what Strategy's doing, and they look at it as something that is completely unsustainable? What do you say to them?
I'll say it's just novel, and there are some Bitcoiners who have done the work, but not enough work on the corporate side of the theory. There are definitely the non-Bitcoiners who have definitely probably not done enough work to understand what's going on here. And it's very novel. And we are learning constantly as we are building the strategy, and people are also learning. So there's a lot of learning behind the scenes here. So people just need to do the work, and we feel good and we feel confident about our execution capabilities and our management here and the strategy that we are doing. So we are kind of pioneering it, and we are thinking very hard and deep about this and very thoughtfully of how to execute the strategy. So I think people just need to do a little bit of more work to understand, and hopefully these conversations will help people understand how we are doing things differently and why things will work and how we think they will work versus whatever criticisms they have.
Yeah. Strategy recently shared that it had a $14 billion unrealized appreciation in the Bitcoin. That's thanks to fair value accounting. So as treasurer, how important has that rule change been with FASB?
It is absolutely incredible. I mean, earlier the accounting was one directional. It was kind of on the negative direction. Now with this fair value accounting, it gives an opportunity to all treasury, all companies to be able to put Bitcoin on their treasury and be able to recognize the impact in real time. Strategy in last quarter recognized the $14 billion fair value appreciation on the Bitcoin holdings. And we added 21 billion, like coincidentally, 21 billion of digital assets last quarter, Bitcoin value to our treasury from like 43 billion to 64 billion.
Yeah.
So that is incredible. That puts us, this gain puts us in one of the top 10 companies in the US in the last quarter by operating income. And that is like huge if you think about it. We are more than 100 billion market cap company. That would rank us somewhere in the top 80, 90, 100 companies in the America. But operating income wise, that puts us in the top 10. So that is incredible feat for a company like us.
Well, it's really hard for any Bitcoin treasury company that comes after Strategy to compete with something like that. Do you have a message to the corporate treasuries? Because even when I talk to retail investors, that's one of the questions. If Strategy exists, why would I invest in anything else? What do you say to that?
I think it's not a competition. it's Team Bitcoin, and everybody should compare themselves to themselves, and they all benefit with the adoption of Bitcoin on their treasury. What is the alternative to people? Invest in like cash, or keep it in cash, or invest somewhere else, or go acquire companies with their cash, or do some other M&A strategy, or what are the alternatives? And alternatives are all value dilutive, and Bitcoin is the value accretive strategy for all treasuries, for all the corporates, all the 5,000 publicly listed companies in the US market. So it's a value accretive strategy for them. And then they can do it with their own cash, or they can go one step forward to use capital markets to raise more capital and do it. And that will just put them into a different risk reward spectrum. But it's a competition versus themselves, and they will all benefit and be better. And if all the companies do it, they all benefit because Bitcoin is the only true scarce commodity. So everybody should participate in the value appreciation and benefit their shareholders, and not try to really compete with each other. It's like Team Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's good advice. Some of the things you're creating are so novel. How do you help people wrap their head around the fact that the capital markets are really being revolutionized with Bitcoin-backed credit?
That is pretty novel for the fixed income market. When we were marketing this preferred equities, which are paying like kind of high yield like dividends, and between our preferreds, they are across the different spectrum of the yield curve. But it was very fascinating to see when we talked to the investors, there were some investment grade investors also showing up to some of these calls and asking us the story, and they're subscribing to this. So it's very interesting. An investment grade investor wouldn't really look at a high yield type of product, but when they listen to our messaging in the story of how it is backed by multiple X collateral, they start to wrap their head around this, like what is going on. There is a fact here that if you look at the treasuries of some of the biggest AAA grade companies in the US market, they don't have more than 2x or 3x collateral in terms of cash or liquid securities on their balance sheet. For us, if you look at our Strive product, it's like over 6x, 7x, and our entire cap structure is like 5x over collateralized. So that's like a huge amount of over collateralization if you think about it.
Yeah.
And from a risk management perspective, Bitcoin can trade down like 80%, and the creditors are still fine. So when you think about the risk management, you think from the perspective of the creditor, that they will be fine. And when the investors start to get comfort around that, it's like a whole novel product for them that we don't need to be reliant on our software cash flows to be able to pay the dividends.
Right.
And we can issue equity. So which is a novel concept that people also had to wrap their head around. But once they understand it, they realize like this Bitcoin-backed credit is such a huge innovation in the industry, and which can be completely disruptive.
Is there a limit to how many preferreds you can issue?
I mean, no limit, but we have to be thoughtful about how we do it. So we are very deliberate about this, and we think really hard about what does the market need? Where is there a room for, if you're adding a preferred, it's not just for the sake of adding something. It's meeting some unmet demand and unmet need where people need to solve a problem, or what do they need? And depending on that, we come up with an idea, and that's what we carefully launch.
I feel like there must be a lot of learning as you go, because you're creating a lot of this, just basically making it happen for the first time. Yeah. So what's something that you wish you knew at the start of this whole journey when you joined Strategy that you now know?
I wish there was another strategy back then to help us figure all this out, because I can tell you this wasn't easy to figure all this out. But that's what distinguishes us and makes us unique. And the category of one, when we started this, we had the first mover advantage and the relentless, constant motivation to work towards the success of Bitcoin, and for the corporate adoption of Bitcoin, and our belief in this commodity. So that's what's keep us going, and it's constantly a challenge. It has been a challenge to constantly keep moving and figure out new things, and I'm sure it's not going to get easier. And the ecosystem will keep on evolving every single quarter, every single year, over the next, I would say, 5 years or so.
Are you contributing to coming up with some of these price predictions that we've heard from Executive Chairman Michael Saylor? I mean, in BTC Prague, the 21, 21, 21, the AAR, 21 million price target. Like, who's coming up with this?
I would say Michael Saylor's thoughts are his own, and it's all his vision. But our Bitcoin team does help him with some of the detailed financial modeling behind it and help put together some of these presentations and the content. But all the vision and the content and the ideas come from Michael himself.
It's cool to think that you actually got into Bitcoin before Michael Saylor, and now you seem to have found sort of your dream job within the Bitcoin corporate world.
Yeah, I think it was like a perfect place where I came from the traditional finance background in investment banking, spending over a decade, and then I was a Bitcoiner at heart, and I've spent 4 years myself in Bitcoin before coming to Strategy. I joined in 2021, 4 years ago, and I found the home where this is completely amazing to be able to pioneer like the Treasury and lead the Treasury for the biggest Bitcoin Treasury company in the world.
Yeah, it's really incredible. A lot of companies wanting to follow suit. Well, before we wrap up, I want to ask you a personal question, but first, anything else that we didn't cover that maybe you want to share?
I think you did great, so okay with that.
Okay, so we covered a lot of corporate Bitcoin ground. I have to let you guys in on a little fact that I know about Shirish. He can solve a Rubik's Cube very, very quickly, right? How fast can you solve a Rubik's Cube?
It's quick, but it's like it still takes 3 minutes. I'm around 3 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes more.
I mean, it would take me weeks, and I probably still wouldn't get it. I joked that we should do a 3-minute Bitcoin explanation while you're solving the Rubik's Cube. That would go viral. We'll work on that. We'll work. How the heck did you learn to do that? Just practice?
Yeah, my interest in the puzzles and all that, and I just practiced, and it was like a hobby for me. I enjoy it.
I thought of you the other day because I saw someone solving Rubik's Cubes while they were juggling, but you're not there yet.
Oh my God.
No.
Oh, no, I don't want to get there. I think I'm good where I am.
It's fascinating. I mean, this company seems to attract some of the most bright people. So thanks so much, Shirish, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss any new episodes. And if you can, turn on those notifications and leave us a positive review. They really help the show grow organically with new listeners. We have a free weekly newsletter. You can sign up at thenewsblock.substack.com. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. I'm always open to feedback and guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out at info@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.